So we're live on YouTube. Welcome everyone that's watching on YouTube on the replay. And I'm going to turn the recorder on so we get a recording. We get a recording here too. Okay, so it looks like everything is hooked up and we're live. And we're just so grateful to have all of you with us today. We've changed our time or our time and our day to Tuesdays at 12 Eastern. Let me just turn the recorder on so we get a recording. Okay, now we're good. There's a few clicks that have to happen as we get started here. It's kind of a dashboard, not quite like an airline pilot, but for me, it's a little bit like that. Click this, click that, click over here, and get everything going. Thank you all for being with us today. I'm Bill Free, if we don't know each other, and Jenny Beal is our co-host for this series. And as I was saying, as we opened up the room, this is our longest book study. We've been doing the book studies for 3 years now. We've done all of Rupert Spira's books, one of them twice, The Nature of Consciousness, and we did John Klein, Francis Lucille's, and Rupert's teacher, mostly Francis, knew him personally, and Jenny has some great insights on Jean Klein. And now we've moved to Francis Lucille, who is, all of these are the greatest of the great. They are the greatest non-dual teachers, and this is, of course, my opinion, but they're the greatest teachers of the direct path that I know of. And Francis and Rupert, they're with us today. They're alive today, and Jenny often goes to Francis's weekly meditations and satsangs. So she's a really great reference for us, not only because she's in those meetings with Francis, but also she's been many years with Rupert and with many of Rupert's teachers, even before meeting Rupert. So she has a vast understanding and like a library of clarity around the things that we're going to speak of. I would be at the bottom of the totem post, but I have such a love for truth. And often you'll hear me reference Course in Miracles ideas as it might relate to something that we're doing. And I hope you don't get put out by that. There are many that follow me here because I'm also a Course in Miracles teacher, and we put out a lot of content about A Course in Miracles. And what I try to do with relating to A Course in Miracles, I try to be a bridge and help A Course in Miracles students who are basically on a dualistic progressive path to move into the direct experience that A Course in Miracles actually points to, but doesn't it has a little bit it doesn't really bring you to that point of absolute certainty and a direct experience as the non-dual does. So this bridge, and I've had at least a dozen or more, could be 24, A Course in Miracles students thank me a year later saying, "Oh my God, Bill, now I go back and read the Course and I read it like a totally different experience." Because now that you have that understanding and that direct experience, it gives you a different experience completely. And having said all of that, I just want to say that for the Perfume of Silence, we did the foreword. It was awesome, and now we're going to move to doing 2 chapters a month. So we're going to cover a chapter for 2 weeks. We're going to cover half and then half. And what I've noticed from these essays is that the questions there, I mean, it doesn't surprise me that Rupert picked these out. He spent 3 years or spent a year working on this project, and then it sat for 3 years. But the questions are potent questions. And for me, what I'm finding is I'm going deeply into the answers, the question, and then the answers that are given by Francis, because they seem to be having an effect on my experience. And I hope you'll go slow with your reading and don't just try to read everything and have the intellectual information down, because this is more of an experience study group. And having said that, Jenny, I'm going to turn the mic over to you for a minute. If we get more people in, I'll handle the dashboard, and I would just like for you to open us to the chapter one in whatever way you want to go.
Okay, so the first half of this chapter is about seeing that I'm not limited to a specific body mind. So Francis starts with the body and then he goes on to the mind. And then that leads into what meditation really is. So if we start with the body, then he explains in an answer to the first question that the distinction between me and not me is purely artificial. It's just a convention that we learn as we grow up. And so when we say my body is sitting on a chair, we think that my body is me and the chair is not me. But there's no reason for that distinction. Neither are me, which is really the first stage of this path, or both are me. But in either case, my real body is the world. And Francis is very keen on discovering things through experiments, and his meditations, he calls them experiments, and he regards them as experimenting rather than practicing. He's not too keen on the word practice. So I thought maybe we might start by doing an experiment about me and not me, and we'll start in the sort of way that Francis nearly always starts his contemplations. So if we sit comfortably and close our eyes and just allow sensations of the body, perceptions of the world, probably be mostly hearing since our eyes are closed, or any thoughts, just to flow through. Don't try to interfere with any of them. Don't try to stop them, or equally don't latch on to any of them. Just allow them to flow through. So we just allow everything to be exactly as it is. And then if you turn your attention to the weight of your body on the chair, that weight is a sensation. And that sensation, we tend to conceptualize it as being in two parts. So one part being my body, me, and the other part being the chair. But with our eyes closed and just contemplating that sensation, see that actually it's really just one sensation. There's no reason to divide it into a me and a not me, a my body and a chair. It's just one sensation. And now if we open our eyes, we can see at least part of our body, and we can see at least part of the chair. But equally, there's no need to make that division between the two. It's that division is purely artificial. And even from a scientific perspective, what we call our body is intimately connected with the world. The air we breathe, the food we eat, and at the atomic level, there's constant interchange of particles between what we call my body and what we call the world. There's no real dividing line. There's no real separation. So how can we really say that this body is me and this world is not me? And by taking this approach, by doing this experiment, we see that actually the world is my body. My body isn't just this limited appearance that we conventionally call my body. The whole world is my body. So that's an example of the sort of way that Francis does these experiments. And then a little bit later on, he goes on to answer the objection that, well, I can sense my body, but I can't sense the bodies belonging to other people. So this body, I must be limited to this body. There must be a limitation there. But he uses the analogy of a car, that really that doesn't actually follow, because if you get in your car and drive, you can see all the controls in your car, and you can make it go places, but you can't do the same with the other cars that are around on the road, only with your own car. But there's no way you would think, I am my car. That would be crazy. So that objection really doesn't really stand up to any kind of scrutiny.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that experience that we are sharing as we open, as we get quiet, and we really become the witness of the sensations, and also the careful way that you describe the just being aware of the body weight on the chair, and that's also a sensation. These are subtle little portals to understanding these ideas. And I think it's important that at least this is what I found, it's important that we bring attention to I am, that we bring attention to to being present as we begin these investigations, as we begin these ideas, because I think they'll help us to immerse into the experience that's being offered. Would you say that as well?
Yes, very much. It's the focus is, it's not so much a focus, but it's an a, allowing mind to contemplate what that which is aware of my experience,
Yeah.
rather than focusing on the experience itself and making judgments about it, or coming to conclusions about it. It's that which is having that experience is what's
Yeah.
important, and that is the I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
And Rick mentions, and this is so good that you mentioned this, Rick. This book is not easily read. And you are so right. Sometimes I have to read the same sentence 4 or 5 times before it actually comes into understanding. Be gentle on yourself and don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Just allow yourself to, whatever comes in, that will come in. And other things are actually coming in, even if you don't realize it. And then weeks from now, you'll go, oh man, okay, I got it. Or maybe even tomorrow, or the next sentence. So just allow yourself to know nothing. And then everything will be revealed. And that's been my experience. And I'm 100% with Rick when I say I had that same experience with Rupert, some of Rupert's teaching, and until I didn't, and then Francis's teaching and Jean Klein, all of it, this and until that idea comes in to clarity, and then all of a sudden you go, oh, okay, now this is becoming easier for me to get and to absorb.
Yes. Now, Linda has asked a question which I think is a very good one.
Okay.
It's about the phrase the my real body is the world. Um, the world. It's true that the world is in me consciousness, but we have to be very careful that we don't mean me mind, that we don't identify with the mind. So when we're talking about the body, we are really talking about part of the world. And so we are making at that time, we're making an artificial separation which we're between that which witnesses the mind and the body and the world, and the mind, the body, and the world itself. We're putting mind, body, world in just one box, one category. We're saying there's an I which witnesses it. In fact, that distinction later on then really collapses, and it's exactly as you say. What I am is everything.
Mm, yeah.
There's no separation at all. But that first separation we make is the witnessing presence of awareness. So my body, when awareness, the witnessing awareness witnesses my body, it should be witnessing the world and not witnessing this bit of flesh and bones only.
Yeah. I can hear Rupert saying, and we really need to make a concession here when we call the body, the world, our body, and so even that is a concession to the realm of what is nothing and everything.
Yes, yes.
We're just using a symbol.
Yes, we are, but it's not to say that the world doesn't have existence. Francis is very clear that the world has existence, and it has existence separate from minds.
Yes.
So it has existence,
Yeah.
and my body is an integral, utterly interconnected part of that, and both my mind and the body and the world are all manifestations of one consciousness, one reality.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Thank you for that clarity on that. And Aaron, I see that you have a hand up, and I think we'll take the question from Aaron, and then we'll get started with some of the content of the first half of this chapter. Be present without intention is the title of chapter 1. It is rich with great questions that are picked out. And of course, Francis has really great answers for that. Aaron, would you like to unmute your mic? There you go.
I'm reading from a Kindle, so I don't have a page number. I apologize. But along with this same discussion where he's um, talking about in the absence of any interpretation, we discover that our body is consciousness. And then he uses the example of where he talks about we experience sensations, and it's only a subsequent interpretation that tells us the sensation arose in my foot. And he says, at the time of the sensation, our foot was not present and our body was not present, only the sensation was present. And I wrote a note to myself, so we only think we feel pain in the foot, but actually we just feel a sensation of pain.
Yes, pain is just an intense sensation, and it's like any sensation. Any sensation can have a degree of intensity. So pain is just a very intense one.
And we just ascribe a spot based on our other previous interpretations, possibly.
Yes, from the point of view of dealing in a practical sense with that pain, then we need to superimpose a materialistic model of a body. And then we go to the doctor and say, well, I've got this very bad pain and it's in my foot and it's here. So we give it a location and we describe it. And that's that's a model, which we'll come on to a little bit later in this first half of the chapter, the idea of models. It's described here as theories, but nowadays Francis tends to call them models, in fact. So that's fine. But when we're looking at what we are and what consciousness is, we don't use that model because it's not appropriate. And if we were looking at pain from the point of view of consciousness, we close our eyes and we feel where the pain is, we'll find that it isn't actually located anywhere. It's no distance from us, and the no distance is exactly the same as the no distance of hearing an aeroplane up in the sky. That's equally at no distance from us. So there is no sense of location and no sense of a real sense of space in the three-dimensional way that we normally conceptualize the world. So if we go on, I think Erin's probably happy with that. She's turned her mic off anyway.
This was a real mind bender for me when I first had this reference in, I don't know remember which one of Rupert's books that he refers to, but he actually does refer to Francis Lucille of pointing him in the direction of this. And then he gives an experiment where where I think he touches the carpet or something, and Francis tells him that, he gives him the introduction to this idea that sensation, that feeling, it's not anywhere. If you didn't, if you go back to the idea that you're 3 months old, well, you don't know what your body is yet. You can't identify where a sensation comes from. So there's going to that level of awareness. You go back to the place where you can't use a previous experience because you don't even know you don't know what gender you are. You don't know what body parts are yet. So from there, you're at the more innocent level of perceiving sensations that have no location. And I think that understanding is the most helpful for me so that I can recognize that sensations, that I am not the body mind that is actually having the sensation experience. I am that which is aware of the experience, the perception that there is a body mind, and I am that which is aware of the sensation that is non-localized.
Yes, yes.
So why don't we look at the first, when I look at you sort of covered that first paragraph, I think, Jenny, but when I look at what I underlined on the first page, which is page five in the book, and for you all that are looking at Kindle, my apologies, I haven't referenced the Kindle versus the page numbers yet. I don't
It's
know when I
probably a
will.
4. I would make a guess. I've the ones
Four
I've
on Kindle.
highlighted. I have made a mark on, because I've
Okay.
got both the book and the
Good.
Kindle version.
So on the second
Yes.
question, it says con, the connection I have with my body is different from the connection I have with other bodies. This is kind of what both of you said a little bit. That is why I feel that this body is myself and others are not. For example, I cannot feel the sensations in someone else's body. And this, Francis does go deeper into this as we go more into this chapter. So we'll just kind of leave that alone as he answers it later on. But what what I like about the answer that Francis gave in this next paragraph, he says, so although you seem to have a special relationship with your car, he talks about the car model, it doesn't imply that you are not your car. It is the same in relation to your body. You are the consciousness in which your body, mind, and all other body minds appear. And this is sort of like what you were saying, Jenny. This is the one, there is only one being, there is only one consciousness. We are not the object of experience. We're not the body mind experience. We are that which is aware of all experiences. And the same awareness that is the witness of experiences that I can cognize, that I can perceive, is the same awareness that everything uses as its awareness, which is the same as consciousness.
Yes, yes.
And that's like the cool, and here's where I would get tripped up in my earlier days of understanding. I would think that that tree has the same awareness that I have, and that's where I totally jump off the cliff, and I make consciousness have I make a tree, an object of experience, have consciousness instead of consciousness being the awareness of the object of experience.
Yes, consciousness has trees rather than trees having consciousness.
Right,
And
right.
similarly, what's even more, I mean, that's fairly obvious and easy to understand. However, what is more difficult to understand is that consciousness has body minds rather than body minds having consciousness, and that's really important.
Yes.
And there's something he says on page 8, which relates to that, and this is Kindle on page 6. The apparatus with which we see is by itself inert, unable to see. A telescope is useless without an astronomer behind it. It doesn't see anything by itself. Likewise, the apparatus of mind doesn't see anything by itself. And if we really contemplate that, if we really think about what that means, it is very, very startling. And what he's really saying is that there's only one perceiver, and that perceiver is consciousness. He recently on a recent satsang, he described the mind as being like, in fact, the body mind as being like a biocomputer. So you can program a computer to look at an image from its camera and recognize people and buildings and trees and things. Computers can do this now. It's perfectly possible, but the computer doesn't understand what it is seeing. Equally, the mind doesn't understand what it is seeing. Only consciousness understands what it is seeing, and consciousness is essentially using the mind as an agency of perception, as a biocomputer. So the mind itself doesn't understand anything.
So consciousness is using this bodysuit to look through the telescope to interpret what it thinks it's looking at.
Yes, but it has the understanding of what it is looking at. The telescope doesn't have any understanding.
Right. This really does give clarity to some to just wrapping your mind around it. And it's not, for me, it's not so that we can intellectually understand these ideas, although I think it's important to have understanding. I think it's mostly so the mind that has a fixed position on its identity relaxes its fixed position so that it can be a little bit more open to an idea that is not body-mind based.
Yes. And Francis points out that all understanding, not just spiritual understanding, all understanding is beyond the mind. So, and we know this, we can see this when we hear a joke, then the understanding of that joke happens in the space beyond the mind. Suddenly the mind comes back and can explain the joke. It's the same with a mathematical theorem. The mind can eventually come back and it can write it down in mathematical form. But the understanding comes from beyond the mind, and any kind of understanding that's true of. Mostly it's so quick that we don't really notice that gap between thoughts in which understanding arises. So those two examples, an example of a joke or understanding of a mathematical theorem, are times when it's slower. There's a bigger gap.
Yeah.
And it's that same gap in which understanding of what we are arises, and understanding that the consciousness that we are is not limited. We talked last time about noumenal and phenomenal. So it's the place from which noumenal experience arises rather than phenomenal experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And for me, it really helps to the understanding helps. The goal of understanding for most people is to establish oneself in peace, in inner peace and to navigate in this bodysuit without being distracted by some of the trappings that happen in our daily experiences.
Yes, and he points out a lovely sentence. Whatever happens, we are the consciousness in which it is happening. That's page 8 or page 7 on Kindle.
Yes, yes.
And that
And
we have to he also says the same, similar, a little bit further on. We have to dissociate consciousness, which is subjective and universal, from mind, which is objective and personal. And that's really important.
yeah, yeah, that's the neti neti. It's the first part of identifying primary to a subject to object, not to stay there, but that's almost like the first step that we take when we identify what is it that's aware of this experience. It gives us a primary association so that we can put a little bit of space between what is aware of the experience and the experience.
Yes, yes, exactly. Instead of thinking and feeling ourselves to be a body mind, we think and feel ourselves to be the witnessing presence of awareness. And then that's the starting point for recognizing that awareness that we now recognize ourselves to be is actually universal. That the awareness that I think I am is the same as the awareness, it's identical as the awareness that you feel that you are, that there is only one awareness in which everything, all appearances appear, which all manifestation happens.
Right. Yes. That is such a liberating idea.
Yes,
That,
yes,
that, that is such a liberating idea because when you take it into practical application, you look at the many faces that are on the screen in front of us, we all share the same awareness. There's
yes,
not, and actually, you could even say the we becomes the I.
yes, yes. Mm.
And there's no space even though many here might be in Europe, on other continents, around the globe, there's no space where this I is not touching.
Yes, yes.
That's like totally mind-boggling and freeing at the same time.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Well, let's keep going. There's a sentence that at the bottom of page 9, in the paragraph that starts out, the mind then becomes silent. The question that was related to this paragraph was, what is the function of the mind in this process? And he's talking about the process of the looking of the I feel as if I am looking out of this body and not and not it's in italicized, so it's harder to read, not out of the table. So although that which sees is obviously infinite, it appears to have a limited or individual view. Okay, so that's the more of the my, me. This is before you make the step that the I is everyone's I, is the same I. And
Yes,
this paragraph that I was referring to, the mind then becomes silent. This is not an artificial silence, but a natural silence when the mind has reached its limits and cleansed itself of all the accumulated theories. Then, for a while, the question is dropped, and in the absence of any question, the sense of separation vanishes. We now find ourselves in a welcoming presence in which the stage has been prepared for the permanent miracle. And does he call it open-mindedness? Okay, he doesn't. He says,
Yes, yes. He says that, well, what he says in the paragraph before is that the function of mind is to eliminate all our beliefs about consciousness, to depersonalize it. In other words, to be open to the possibility that I'm not a separate entity. He describes it as being open to the dimension of consciousness, so to the
yeah,
noumenal, to what lies beyond the mind. And that's this, and the mind's role in that is very important. It's sometimes people regard mind as being something bad, something we need to stop. Not at all in this teaching. Mind is essential to it, to us, and to this teaching, and that's its role, to be able to see through all beliefs and take us to that place of not knowing, and then which is a place of openness, and then from that place of not knowing, then that silence arises.
yeah. And there's for some of us, some of you may be looking at some of this, because some of this heavy or some of maybe mind bending language, if you have a willingness, just a small willingness to be open, just a willingness to see things differently, a willingness to be open-minded, that small willingness is enough to relax the mind and allow open-mindedness to avail itself. That's that's what I've seen, is that just a willingness to, to to relax the mind that thinks it's a body mind.
Yes.
um, what
So
else do you have?
Michael has asked, what is the heart that we are journeying towards? That was in what you were just reading, and that's a good question. Really what I think he is referring to is what Ramana Maharshi said, which is sinking the mind into the heart. And it doesn't mean an organ of the body. It doesn't mean any kind of location. And in fact, he explains that in the next question and answer. He's just referring to that placeless place which is beyond the mind, just to noumenal experience.
Right.
And
Would that
we can call it the heart. Sometimes we call it the heart because when you come back from that into mind interpreting that experience, there's often this feeling of freedom. There's this release, a feeling of love.
yeah.
So the heart can be an appropriate word for it, but that quote from Ramana Maharshi is very often misunderstood, and that's why he very carefully corrects that possible misunderstanding in that next question and answer. And he says the Son of Man has no place to rest his head, so the heart is not a place.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah. It's
lovely
almost
quote,
like a
isn't it?
visceral, where the understanding and the direct experience becomes a visceral feeling that's
Yes,
that's
yes,
connected with it. And so that it's the heart. The heart really is a symbol for establishing the experience.
yes, yes. It's a symbol for going beyond mind, because we always distinguish mind and heart. But yes, both are needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have a number of questions uh, or comments. There was a question that said from Maud early on that said, I didn't get the analogy with the body in the car because I don't feel my car as I feel my body. So I cannot compare with other cars because I don't even feel my car. So
Well,
I think,
that really is the point. In fact, he's pointing out the illogicality of the fact that you feel this is my body, therefore it is me. And then when you get in your car, you say, well, this is my car. It's very different from my abilities to use other cars. so, uh, so this is me. You wouldn't say this is me when you were driving your car. So why do you say this is me when you drive your body?
yes, perfect. There it is. Well, thank you for that clarity also. And Don made a statement here that I want to read. I love it. I do believe Jesus, the non dual teacher, said, "The kingdom is within." And I love this reference because within is aware presence. Within the kingdom of heaven is aware presence, and it's available while you're still seemingly sitting in a bodysuit.
I would go a bit further than that. And I
What's
would
that?
say the kingdom of heaven is within, the kingdom of heaven is without. There is no within and no without.
Oh, good. Yes, yes. I'll go there. I'm on that. Yeah,
Well, I think you are there, Bill.
yeah, yeah. I'll go with that too. That's an expanded version, expanded interpretation that I didn't have until about I think maybe 3 or 4 years, probably 3 years ago when I met Rupert at Garrison, and he does on about the third day of his retreats, he takes you to include all objects of experience, everything that all perception is also included, and that's where the neti goes away, and it's the everything experience.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, beautiful. Um, Rick says awareness does not imply mind. That's a very human and egoic, arrogant interpretation. That's only trying to create a God in our human mind image. Yes, yes, yes.
Yes, yes. There's a very big difference between awareness and mind, and uh, an easy way of looking at it, and that is that awareness never changes. Awareness never comes and goes. Mind comes and goes, and mind changes. So, in mathematical terms, we say um, awareness is continuous and mind is discontinuous.
Yes, yes. And Mike has a comment here. As nothing, I am understanding, and as everything, I am love. As nothing, I am understanding, and as everything, I am love. Well, it's interesting that I mean we are what God is, and I know that might be blasphemy for some people, but we are the essence of what God is, and to wrap your mind around that is where it's the beauty of this love for truth, because you realize that it's like the fish in the ocean that's looking for the water. It's completely surrounded and swimming in the water, and what it is not separate from the water.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
So let's look at where can we break the halfway point on this chapter. We have about 10 minutes left.
I think the halfway point is about halfway down page 14. That seems a sort of a reasonable break point because things change a little bit. The focus changes a little bit
Okay,
after that,
good.
and a lot of the pages are from where is it 9 to 12 really, are a kind of exploration again, really a little bit like what we did to start with. And he gives us lots of different ways in which we can experiment. So he always starts his explorations with just allowing all our perceptions to flow through, sounds that are arising, bodily sensations, thoughts, feelings. We don't give any attention to any of those things. We just allow it to be as it is. And so a lot of that text is a description of that. We're not trying, and this is important, we're not trying to hang on to a peaceful state or to look for anything that's different or anything that's more spiritual or some kind of exotic experience. We're not looking for anything. We're just relaxing, and talks about all appearances being floating in that peaceful space-like presence. And then he gives various tips about what to do if the mind tries to take us somewhere else. Typically, it will try to attach itself or latch on to one particular appearance in consciousness. And if it does that, then you just bring it back to, a good tip is to bring it back, because he says, to the sounds that are occurring. And then from there, it's very easy to go back to that space-like presence in which those sounds are appearing. And again, you just let it float there. And what's also important is to remember that when we open our eyes after we've been sitting, exploring in this way, when we open our eyes, there's no need to lose that experience of presence. It's always with us, whether we notice it or not. It's always with us.
Yes. Yes. And what I'm finding is that years later, after following these ideas and following this understanding, years later, that becomes a more primary experience, and not one that I feel comes and goes as it seemed to previous to the understanding. The understanding brings more of a primary experience of presence.
Yes, and there's no reason for that sense of presence to disappear when we're involved in responding to situations in the world or engaged in activities in the world. It's still there, and we can be aware of it, be aware of awareness while all of those things are going on. We allow the body mind to do what the body mind does, and there's nothing we can discover eventually that there's nothing that can actually disturb the presence of awareness.
Yeah, just so there's a as you were saying, Jenny, when I started looking through these essays on pages like 9 to 14, I started really just for review. And for what I do is I underline, I put stars by my favorite points of reference. And what I found was that it was bringing, as I was using Francis's prescription or his ideas, like on page 12 at the top of the page, second paragraph, he says, all we have to do is to transpose what is true of the world in such a situation to the realm of thoughts and bodily sensations. We welcome our thoughts and bodily sensations in exactly the same way as we welcome the song of the birds, the traffic noise, or whatever it is we are experiencing. And then he says, when the song of the birds or whatever it is we are experiencing is present, it is simply present. We have no agenda with it. We don't do anything to make it appear, to make it stay, or to make it disappear. And he gives a pointer to experiencing everything. He gives a pointer to allowing everything to be just as it is and letting awareness be the witness to the experience, and just sinking, resting in that experience. He gives a description of how to use these ideas to move through the experience that's being pointed to.
Yes. And related to that, George has put an important question on the board. Could you expand on how to increase presence when eyes are not closed, in everyday living? Well, presence is infinite. It can't be increased. It's always there. It's not always noticed. So we can increase our noticing of it. And one way of increasing our noticing of it is to explore whether we are really the one that is doing anything. Because as soon as we think we do something, we are conceptualizing ourselves as a separate entity. When we conceptualize ourselves as a separate entity, then presence isn't apparent to us. We don't tend to notice it. So that's an important thing, and that's something that needs to be explored. Another block to noticing presence is what Francis describes as the resistance. I don't like what is happening. I want something different to happen. What is the me that is liking or not liking? Consciousness is allowing everything that's happening. Consciousness, it is happening. It is manifesting. The idea of a me objecting to it seems really rather crazy. And it's seeing that I think helps us to notice presence all the time. Then it makes no difference whether we have our eyes open or closed, like we did right at the very beginning when we were looking at our bodies in the chair. So we were opening our eyes then, and we were seeing that actually, even visually, there's just one image. There's just all there is one. So we can do the same. We can do the same thing. There's no need for the mind to be silent. That's not necessary. Presence is available to us to notice whether the mind is silent or whether it is not. If it is not silent, then we notice that it is not silence. And what is it that notices that it's not silence? It can only be presence.
Yeah. Yes. And with that, we say amen. Thank you all for being with us today. We shortened this week because we moved the date. We moved it from Thursday to Tuesday. So now we'll be on Tuesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern. And I will be sending a link out to everyone that is registered. And it will be I have to manually kind of fool the system. It'll come out as the link will be in the title of your notification that you'll receive. I'll grab that from YouTube and send it back out to you. And if someone mentioned that they're looking for a schedule, I haven't had time to type one up. If someone wants to type up in a Word document the chapters 1 through 18 and send those to me. That will speed that along, and I'll put it on billfree.com with the Perfume of Silence. I'll put a reading schedule that will be pretty close. And if someone that has the book and wants to and has the time that would like to sort of correlate some of the pages with Kindle, that would be another asset to help in bringing some a schedule that's more available to everyone. But many hands do light work, and if anyone wants to help, just send the Word document or any kind of input that you would like to share to billfreeonline@gmail.com. And thank you all for being here. Jenny, do you have any final words before we go?
I think I would just like to read some final words, very short, from Francis.
Oh,
This
good.
presence is our common treasure, our true Father and our true divine Mother. Offer your mind and your body to this presence.
Nice. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you all for being here. Blessings to you, and we'll see you on Tuesday next
Thank
week.
you, everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye, Jenny. Thank you.
Bye, Bill and